The first gunshot didn't come from a weapon, it came from the sharp crack of a beer bottle shattering against her barn door at midnight. Sarah Whitmore froze in her kitchen, her hand tightening around the old ceramic mug of coffee she hadn't touched. Outside, the laughter of reckless young men rolled through the night like thunder. They thought it was a game. They thought she was weak. They thought she was just a quiet, single mother struggling to keep her small farm alive on the outskirts of town. What they didn't know was that Sarah Whitmore had once been a Green Beret sniper, a ghost in the mountains of Afghanistan who could end a man's breath from over a mile away. She hadn't told anyone in town. To them, she was just the widow with a 7-year-old daughter named Emily, who wore muddy boots to school and packed lunches in worn paper bags. Sarah had moved to the farm after her husband's accident, wanting peace, wanting her daughter to grow up among animals and orchards instead of city sirens. She never bragged about her past, never even hinted at it. People whispered anyway. Some said she was strange. Others said she was weak. But weakness wasn't what kept her quiet. It was restraint. That night, restraint was tested. The bullies weren't just teenagers out for mischief. They were the sons of powerful men in town, the sheriff's nephew, the mayor's boy, and a couple of others who had never been told no in their lives. They started small. First, stealing eggs from her coop. Then, letting her goats loose. Sarah caught them once and warned them with calm, level eyes. But to boys who had never been held accountable, her silence looked like surrender. And so, they escalated. By the third week, Sarah's barn had graffiti across the side. Emily came home from school in tears, saying the boys called her the farmer's rat. Sarah's chest burned with anger she hadn't felt since combat, but she forced herself to kneel beside her daughter, cupping Emily's cheeks. "We don't fight fire with fire, sweetheart. We fight it with strength. Strength they don't understand." Emily didn't know what that meant, but Sarah did. When the bottle smashed against the barn, Sarah set her coffee down. She moved to the front door, her bare feet silent on the wooden floorboards. She didn't grab her rifle. She didn't need to. That part of her life was locked away, buried under discipline and scars. But the bullies had stepped too far onto her land. She opened the door and stepped out into the night. The boys froze when they saw her. They expected her to cower, to call the sheriff who would shrug it off because of who they were. Instead, Sarah stood tall, her shadow long under the moonlight. Her eyes, sharp and unblinking, swept over them like a scope lining up targets. For the first time, they felt something they had never felt before, fear without explanation. "You're trespassing," Sarah said, her voice even, steady, and cold enough to slice through the night air. The sheriff's nephew laughed nervously, trying to shake it off. "We're just messing around. Don't take it so serious." Sarah didn't blink. "Leave. And don't come back." They tried to laugh again, but it faltered. Something in her presence pressed down on them, something primal. They backed away, muttering, and disappeared into the trees. But Sarah knew it wasn't over. The next morning, her chicken coop was burned to the ground. Emily screamed when she saw the flames licking at the wood. Sarah pulled her daughter close, her jaw tight. She could call the sheriff, but the law wasn't on her side. The bullies had families who would cover their tracks. Justice here was selective. That night, Sarah sat on the porch, thinking. Her training had taught her patience, the art of striking at the right moment. She remembered her commander's words, "The best snipers don't just pull the trigger. They wait, they watch, they dismantle the enemy's will." She decided she wouldn't use her rifle. But she would remind these boys, and the town, what real strength looked like. The following week, the boys returned. This time, they brought spray paint, fireworks, and smug grins. Sarah had already prepared. She had rewired the barn doors to lock from the outside and dug a shallow trench around the side yard. When the boys stormed the property, Sarah triggered the trap. The fireworks they tried to light backfired, sparking a blaze that illuminated their terrified faces. Their laughter turned to screams as they realized they were caught in their own chaos. From the shadows, Sarah stepped forward, her posture unflinching, her gaze locked on them. "You want a war," she said softly. "You picked the wrong woman." The boys scrambled, tripping over the trench, scraping knees, and scrambling for freedom. Sarah didn't touch them, she didn't need to. By the time they escaped, their pride was shattered. Word spread fast through the small town. The boys never spoke of what happened that night, but their silence was louder than any rumor. For Sarah, it wasn't about revenge. It was about drawing a line that could not be crossed. She rebuilt her chicken coop, repainted her barn, and kept her head high when she walked into town with Emily. Slowly, people began to look at her differently. Not as the quiet widow, but as a woman who carried unshakable strength in her silence. Months later, the sheriff himself came to her farm. He shuffled uncomfortably on her porch, finally admitting the truth. "My nephew, he won't go near your land anymore. I don't know what you said or did, but, thank you." Sarah only nodded. She didn't explain. She didn't need to. That night, Emily climbed into her lap and asked, "Mom, why don't they bother us anymore?" Sarah kissed her daughter's hair, staring at the stars. "Because sometimes, sweetheart, the strongest people don't have to shout or fight. They just stand tall, and the world remembers." The farm was quiet again, but not the fragile quiet of before.